when he's out there throwing and being a jock and just dominating you, like he gets into a flow, he works quickly, and all of his stuff works. It fires in there. It feels like it's a turbo mode out of his hand, and he dominates people, and that's what he's shown over his last 3 or 4 starts.
Welcome to the Viva Albertos podcast. As always, I am your host, Jake Wood, and I am joined this week by fellow writer Gabe Simons. Today, we are talking all things minor leagues with writer for ScoopsWithDannyMac.com, Andy Carroll, and AAA Memphis play-by-play man Alex Coil. So tonight, I wanted to go ahead and start off with Alex. The life of a AAA manager can be a cruel one because once a guy is, ready and producing, he's whisked up to the big leagues. So with both Jimmy Crooks and Blaze Jordan now in the show, is manager Ben Johnson's star outfield Josh Baez the next in line? You're muted, Alex.
Yeah, it helps to know technology. But,
great start. We're off and rolling.
Hot start. Stay hot. But look, he's definitely the one that is showing the highest ceiling at the moment. That's for sure. I think. One thing that I've mentioned with a number of guys, especially Jimmy Crooks, you'd like to see a little bit more consistency out of Joshua Baez. Some of that swing and miss can come and go and play a big factor. A lot of multi-strikeout games. It's always going to be there for him. It's always going to be there for most power guys. But man, when he gets a hold of one, it's fun to watch. That's for sure.
Alex, I got to wonder because a lot of people have been wondering about Blaze Jordan's defense at third base. In your opinion, what can we expect longer term? He's looked decent so far, but it's been 2 games.
Yeah, well, obviously small sample size up at the big league level. I can say a couple of things. Number one, he takes a ton of pride in defensive progression, a lot more than people may even think about. Like the amount he works defensively, not as much as anybody does at the plate, but he puts in a lot of work there, takes pride in it. And look, before his last start at third base at AAA, he didn't have an error all season at the third base bag. He had more starts there by almost double digits at third than he did at first this year. And again, had no errors. The only 2 errors that he had in that last start were a 105-mile-an-hour line drive that he got a glove on, and then one where he threw it just slightly high for Leo Bernal and hit off of Leo's glove. And so both errors were charged to him. Obviously, it's a big step up to play third base at the major league level. It's a premium defensive position, especially with the barometer lately in the last 5-7 years in the Cardinals organization of who was playing third base there. Are those shoes going to be filled? No. But Blaze Jordan is going to put in the work to be a serviceable third baseman. I don't think he's going to be a hole there. And I think, part of you saw a 2-3 week span where Blaze didn't play a lot of third base. Part of it may have been, they wanted to see him more at first base. And so there were some headlines out there, they're moving him off third base. They don't see him playable. But when you look at that, it was almost exact moment that Jimmy Crooks got called up to the big leagues. That means, and of course, Jimmy and Leo Bernal were starting the season splitting catching reps, and Leo would get some time at first base, which was a newer position for him, at least playing consistently. So when Jimmy goes up to the big league level, especially before Pozo comes down and is able to report, Leo has to take over everyday catching duties, which creates a hole at first base, and Blaze had to play a lot of those innings. So I think it was a little bit of both there. But he's certainly put a lot of work, got the trust of the front office and everybody that in the developmental ranks that obviously gave the approval to go play third base at the big league level.
Wanted to throw it over to our friend Andy. Andy, good evening to you. When you look at Springfield, the rotation arms what really get your attention between Liam Doyle and Jurangelo St. How are those guys performing and progressing at Springfield? And do you think maybe our good friend Alex could be in line to see them in the near-distant future? Not too distant future, I should say.
Yeah, well, real quick before first, thanks for having me, Jake. And, if we do need a pinch third baseman, there was a guy named Jordan Walker who played a whole bunch of third base down here. So we can just move him right back over to where they were developing him as the third baseman of the future.
No. Don't even start that. No. We don't endorse that here. No. Anyway, about Liam Doyle and Durangelo Seja.
Yeah, so, Liam is a guy that, obviously arrived in Springfield late last year, got a quick look in the fall, and then, came into this season, highly touted, number one prospect in the organization. And you're seeing flashes of obviously, he's an ultra competitor. And as a personality, it's been fun to get to know him because he just does come out like he just came out of a Boston area bar fight, as a guy when he comes out to talk to you. So he's the type of person on the mound that I think, the Cardinals are attracted to that personality. And they, speaking to Patrick Anderson about him, they're like, we really want to embrace who he is, how he pitches. And so, part of his player plan and the way that they're working with him is to, obviously help him develop a lot of those secondary pitches and then find out how he can be effective in the zone. Those are the two areas where he's spending a lot of time. And I spoke to him, for the longest interview I had with him was early in the season. And he was really, he was making an impression that a lot of the pitches that he was throwing were with a purpose. So he's like, I threw my sweeper a ton last night, right? And if he were in the SEC trying to get an out, at Tennessee, he's probably going back to his fastball, but he's trying to do what the organization is helping him develop those secondary pitches. He likes his curveball, his sweeper he's not comfortable with yet, but even his fastball he hasn't been able to command the way that you really need to at this level to succeed consistently. So he had a great month of May. He was holding batters to under a 200 batting average, but continuing to. I think he's about 19 pitches per inning, which is a little higher than what you'd like to see. He's not very efficient. So, with better command, that efficiency will come. His stuff will play. So, I think the Cardinals, I don't think if you do see him in Memphis this year, it would be late in the season and after he really starts to put together more consistent outings in Springfield. Sinja is a lot of fun to watch, man. Like that guy, Durangelo he's an interesting personality, speaks a bunch of different languages. I mean, just a very smart guy. Like as you get to know him, when you do see him, Alex, like he's a very interesting person to talk to and to get to know, but also a guy who can pitch with both arms and has at Springfield this year. I know going into the season, there was the sense that they were going to make him throw right-handed only, exclusively. And he's picked his spots to use his, to switch that glove and go left-handed, but he did about a week or two ago strike out the same guy in a game, once right-handed and then once left-handed. So you don't see that very often. It's been a lot of fun to watch him pitch, and I do think it wouldn't surprise me if he were called up before Liam Doyle. I think they're working on Liam. I mean, Liam's the higher ceiling prospect, but I think you'll see Durangelo probably get to Memphis first.
So Alex, the Cardinals fan base is clamoring for bullpen reinforcements from Memphis, and I'm curious. Do you think Luis Gastelum, Max Rajic, maybe Bryson, well, probably not Bryson Miles because they want to keep him starting, but do you think there are people in the Memphis bullpen right now that they would feel comfortable promoting, say, in a week?
Max Rajic definitely had the start of the season that would make that case next up. But he's going through a little bit of a slump over those last 2 weeks. Of course, he was named Cardinals minor league pitcher of the month for May, led the team in ERA, and even qualified as a reliever to do so, just because he got used so much and went multiple innings and was able to nail down 5 saves so far. On Luis's side, I mean, that guy's changeup is unbelievable. I forget off the top of my head the exact name of the reliever for the Mariners on the back end, but he trains with him in the off season, and his ability to adapt and learn the pitch from guys at the major league level have made him that much more effective. It's one of the best changeups at the AAA level that we've seen in a while since I've been here in Memphis, and needs to get a little bit more on the fastball, not necessarily more velocity or anything, but sometimes it's a little fat and gets hit hard at times. But look, he's pretty dang gross when he is able to get to that changeup and works off of it quite a bit.
Since Jimmy Crooks was elevated to St. Louis, Alex, I'll keep it going with you. It seems like Leo Bernal has really taken his game to the next level since that promotion. Which of the top prospect backstops have you been more impressed by this season, from your unique seat? Is it Jimmy Crooks, or have you been more impressed with Leo Bernal behind the plate this year?
I would have to say Jimmy, just because having a baseline of me seeing him for a full season last year, and knowing, okay, that was a good year. It was a very solid year. Ultimately, got him his major league call up. But knowing what he needed to get better at, and how he did that, controlling the strike zone at the plate, handling the pitching staff behind the plate. Right, Memphis started the season 13-0 with him catching games. And only lost a handful of games before he got called up with him as the catcher. And so gaining trust of the pitching staff and being able to guide guys through games, not only to get through their high stuff, but when they're struggling a little bit, he's a guy that is a fantastic motivator behind the plate, knows what makes each guy tick. And so he's obviously done enough here at this level to get the chance to play at least twice every time through the rotation up at the big leagues. On the Leo side, his highs are really good. They're fantastic. But you still want to see a little bit more consistency defensively. Obviously, coming off of a Rawlings Gold Glove as a minor leaguer catcher, you're expecting him to be unflappable and never make a single mistake and throw at every single runner. There have been some inconsistencies in his glove so far this year. I don't know how much of that is, he's learning, or at least playing first base more than he ever has in his career, and how much of that is taking the mind off of the development behind the plate. I think it's a very good thing that you're, as a catcher especially, you are developing a secondary position to play, especially if you want your bat to be in the lineup. We saw that in the development of a lot of catchers' career. The one that really sticks out to me is Buster Posey, and added a couple of more years to his career simply because he was able to develop into the first base ability toward the end. So I think that will help his staying power once he is able to get up there. But I think he still has some boxes to check here at AAA, and I think he will do so in some time, though.
Sticking to backstops, Andy, the Springfield has two really good backstops right now. One everybody knows, Reniel Rodriguez, but also Ryan Campos is having a surprisingly good offensive season. Have you gotten to see much of Rodriguez yet, or Campos, and what are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, so Raniel got here. He's played 23 games at AA. Got called up when the team went on the road, so we had to wait for about a week to see him. But, obviously his reputation precedes him as a 19-year-old getting to the AA level. You're starting to see more of that, but it's still pretty darn rare for a guy that age to get here. And I think the first thing that jumped out to me, watching him play, is it's such a quiet load, real quick hands, and just a natural hitter. And when I, got to talk to him for the first time, he said, I'm really spending a lot of time working defensively. He goes, hitting, I know how to hit, which, maybe is a little bit of teenage arrogance there, but I think that he just has so much confidence in his ability. Even at this age, getting to this level, that his hands and his bat will play. And, it was an adjustment that you would expect, and I think that it's going to be ongoing. He's going to be at this level probably for a little while. But, hit 2 home runs the other night, both pull side, shots over the bullpen off the manual scoreboard, and then one just to the left of it. And so you can see just the raw, talent that he has, but he's also a fairly polished hitter for his age. And that's really what stood out to the Cardinals when he came to the complex 2 years ago and had a tryout. It was just like, this guy just hits, we're signing him today. So it was the complex down in the Dominican that hosted the tryout for him. So yeah, he's very impressive. The Cardinals have mostly been, having him catch, but he's also started a handful of games at first base. He's been in the designated hitter spot. And so, Campos, again, also, offensively, he's had a great season. He handles the pitching staff really well. The Cardinals, and maybe this is a question I'll kind of turn back to you guys, Gabe and Jake, like when you look at the Cardinals' depth at the catcher position, and, maybe this is an old baseball philosophy now, but there's still a lot of truth in that you want to build your team through the middle out. So, that's catcher, short, second, center field, right? And if you look at the Cardinals, they've got, between Herrera, Crooks, and Pajes, those guys are all 27 and under. They're in their pre-arb years. You've got, Bernal, and then you've got Rodriguez. And it's like, I do think it's going to be interesting to see whether, I doubt it's a deadline thing this year, but into the offseason, into next year's deadline, how does the industry look at the Cardinals' depth in that position? Who are the guys that they're calling Heim Bloom and asking about? If the Cardinals start to look to add a piece here and there, is there a name that would make sense in a package? Because I do think that there's they're going to have to find clarity in that spot, but it's a great position to have depth.
I don't think we know more than you do on that one. We're just as curious how the Cardinals are going to handle the catchers going forward, because there's a lot of them.
It's something to keep our eye on. I just think it's a position that's desirable. It's not common to have depth at that position, and I think I'm interested to see how over the next 18, 24, 36 months the organization figures out how they're going to, where they see that position going in the long term, and how they're going to, maybe use those assets wisely.
Yeah, I agree. I think if I'm looking down the road, I still look at where the organization is, from like a third base position standpoint, and maybe perhaps the Cardinals look to where they have a little bit of surplus potentially behind the plate. Maybe they look for another young third baseman somewhere to fit into the organization. Because there's really no long-term future third baseman in the organization currently, it feels like. Now, I know that Jesus Baez he's still at high A, but that might be the closest thing to like a future at third base, but there's nobody like Andy, what you're getting to watch on a regular basis, or Alex, what you're getting to watch on a regular basis from my standpoint that the Cardinals have unless you want to count, I don't even know, because Nolan Gorman just made it to Memphis, and so that's a whole other conversation in of itself. But if the Cardinals were looking to try to find a different way to use, their excess, like this kind of falls into, you draft the best player available, and then later on you figure out that problem. And so like the Cardinals have all of these great catchers. Now it's getting to that point where eventually they're going to need to figure out that problem and find a way to use that piece for another piece they may need in the future. That's kind of how I look at it.
I think one of the best examples of, Andy brought up the point of building your team through the middle. Cardinals are the catching example right now of the young core, but what the White Sox have done, and they have shortstops playing almost every single position.
Padres
right?
too. Yep.
Well, exactly, but in terms of the youth and how young the White Sox
for sure.
are. Mydroth playing second base. Antonacci, who's been a shortstop his entire life, moving out to left field, and that brings up a path for him to play up there. It's a lot easier when you build through the middle, as Andy was saying. It's easier to be versatile, right? Because a center fielder can play any outfield position. A shortstop can play pretty much any position on the field, right? A catcher is easily transferred over to first base, and depending on the arm, possibly can pick it over at third as well. And so if you can find those guys, and the obviously you just traded a Brendan Donovan, but guys that can play multiple positions, and it just opens up so many other options for them. And I think that's where you're seeing the game go, especially with young talent. The White Sox are going to take another shortstop 1-1 overall this year too.
It's a great point. It really is a great point, Alex, like you said. And I think that the Padres are the ones, and I think that the White Sox are taking it that direction as well, but I think the Padres really started. You look at Merrill and Tatis and Machado and, Bogarts and Cronenworth, and look, all of those guys came up as shortstops until they couldn't anymore. And so I think that really is, like, when we talked to Joe Doyle, who is very good in terms of like the amateur side of things, and he talked about like his conversations with the Cardinals and the way they're looking at things, and based off of how they were looking at it last year, it's they want shortstops, they want the best, most athletic guys on the field that are transferable to other positions, and as they move down that quote unquote defensive spectrum, their defensive abilities are going to start to play up, and it'll just bring a more athletic side of style of play to their all-around game. Andy, I wanted to throw it back over to you really quick. From a guy that was that's fresh to AA to a guy that's been there for a while. Let's talk about Chase Davis. He's been stuck at AA seemingly forever. Do you think he's done enough in the first half of the season for a promotion? Because I know Alex is going to the cupboard is going to get really bare for him to watch here before too long if Chaim Bloom keeps promoting at the rate that he is. Do you think that he's ready for that next challenge at AAA, or is there another level to his game that you're still kind of waiting for him to get to before you think he earns that call?
Yeah, so I think the answer is yes. I think there's another level to his game, and I think that the Cardinals, he may even just need that change of scenery. I don't know necessarily that would unlock something that's missing, but kind of if you've got a large enough sample size at AA, and I think at this point we do, we sort of see what we have. You can see the player that left-handed power, plus defensively, plus arm, and he's shown all of those things. You can see just all of the raw talent and ability. And I mean, the guy is also he's pretty built. So, every time I talk to him, though, a lot of times you'll talk to these guys. I know when I got to speak with Jordan Walker all the time, he would sit there and talk hitting with you for 30 minutes. Here's all the things I'm working on. Here's mechanically all the stuff. Chase Davis has got $1 million smile, and he's mastered the Bull Durham art of saying, I'm here to help the ball club. So I haven't gotten, I know from speaking to other people within the organization what they're trying to work with him, on some more consistent contact. He draws a lot of walks, so it's not that he has bad plate discipline, but I think selecting the right pitches to swing at and how to be aggressive in counts and those things are what they're working on. Taking the ball the opposite way, which he has shown signs of being able to do. Defensively, he's every bit ready for AAA and probably higher than that. But the bat just has not consistently shown. It's shown flashes. He's had games. He's gone on spurts. And then you'll kind of look up and it's like, well, you're right back to where you were after another week or two. He's also been on the DL. So I think he last played May 29th. So I've asked around. I didn't get much information. Somebody did, and they say it's hamstring tightness. That's now about 2 weeks. And the Cardinals down here are very they guard those injuries pretty closely when you ask about it. So. I don't know when his expected timetable has come back. They don't seem to think it's serious, but at the same time, it was a 7-day DL and it's been longer than that. So, it'll be interesting. I think when he comes off the DL, probably likely to stay here, but I do think he'll get to Memphis this year. Whether or not his play has warranted it from he's got to be promoted. We've got to move him up. I think it might just as well be, we kind of know what he's done at AA. Let's get him to AAA. Let's get him a new scenery. Kind of see if that shakes things loose because he's very talented. But being able to consistently put it together has been a struggle.
Another player that has kind of been at the same place for a while, but it's been because of control, is Quinn Matthews. But the last few starts, it looks like he maybe has figured it out a little bit. He hasn't walked many guys. Do you think, first off, what do you think has been causing his control issues? And what can he do to remedy that before he gets a promotion? Because I think the only reason he hasn't been promoted to St. Louis is because they haven't had to add him to the 40-man. I think if he was on the 40-man, he might have gotten the Bryson Watts treatment already.
I totally agree with that last point. As far as what was causing the control issues, there were a lot of variables that the Cardinals were interested in and trying to figure out last season. That's why he spent some time on the injured list in the, middle third of the season. There was some thought, maybe the adjustment from AA to AAA, not only is there a level, but also a completely different baseball that you're throwing. This year, the philosophy has been, okay, maybe we use that too much as a crutch and didn't actually try to treat the plan. But the main thing that I have noticed, and completely honest, it's just intent and confidence on the mound. When Quinn Matthews gets into a flow and has I know I'm better than you, and I'm going to show you that I'm better than you, as opposed to, oh my gosh, things aren't going right. Why am I so bad? Because he is such a smart guy. Stanford, wanted to be an investment banker, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes he starts to think a little bit too much. But when he's out there throwing and being a jock and just dominating you, he gets into a flow, he works quickly, and all of his stuff works. It fires in there. It feels like it's a turbo mode out of his hand, and he dominates people, and that's what he's shown over his last 3 or 4 starts.
Yeah, you took my last question, Gabe. Gosh dang it. Let's think about it from this perspective. I want to end with you guys on this note. I want you to each look down a level and then pluck one player from the level below that you're excited to see over the last 3 to 4 months of the season. So, Alex, I'll let you go ahead and start real quick. And somebody from Andy's neck of the woods that you're excited to hopefully pluck and see firsthand at the end of the season. Then Andy, you from High A.
I am a pitching guy first, and will always be a pitching guy first, especially in this ballpark, especially with some of the offense that we have seen. We've seen enough home runs. We've seen all of the good stuff offensively, consistent pitching and dominant pitching, and especially, as I was just mentioning with Quinn, the tenacity and I don't want to, but the I know I'm better than you, and I'm going to go out and dominate you and impose my will on you. Liam Doyle. He brings all of that. Some people affectionately called him a tweaker at Tennessee, which is just awesome. Like that's the type of college baseball pitcher that I want to take, especially with how much stuff he has. I want to see that version on the mound. I want to see the Bulldog there. And if the Redbirds can finish one game better than the Rochester Red Wings this week, I want to see him pitching in the International League Championship Series here at AutoZone Park.
Yeah, so I'll definitely answer the question, but just to kind of piggyback on your answer there, Alex, one of the things that's been a lot of fun too, just in the early days of Raniel being up here with the AA club, is to see Liam throwing to him, which has only happened once or twice, I think. But I did ask Patrick Anderson about that. I said, you've been around a bunch of different organizations. How often have you had a number one prospect in an organization be a pitcher or a catcher, and then the one right behind him, form a battery at the same level? And he talked about Salvador Perez and his time with the Royals and some of the pitching staff that they had come up, because yeah, you're right, it's very rare. And so it's kind of neat to see them start to, especially as Liam's really figuring out what's going to help make him an effective pitcher at the big league level, and working through some of those secondary pitches, to be able to do that with a catcher that may end up being that long-term piece. Again, as the Cardinals kind of figure out the puzzle pieces there at the catcher position, but it just wouldn't be surprised if what's kind of starting to form down here between those two lasts, for a long time. For me, it's Tanner Franklin. I'll stick with the pitching mode. And I guess the Tennessee pitchers. But yeah, it's been interesting to see Peoria, which for forever that league has been such a pitcher's paradise, that now all of a sudden it's been tough on pitchers in that league this year, which is a reverse of what we've seen for so many years. So for the way he's pitched down there, I think it's Springfield definitely one of the things that I'm going off a little afield here, but that I found interesting talking as we did with the organization higher ups a couple weeks ago, Jake, is hearing some of the chatter that in the draft they might be prioritizing hitting. Which just kind of, the first time I heard it, I thought, oh no, like we need more pitching in the organization. That's really what's missing. If you look at, the Cardinals, even now at the big league level, like their offense is clicking and humming, and you can see how that's going to play, in the future, and the likelihood that that's going to continue with those guys. And you're just wanting to add, as many pieces to that rotation as you can get. And then I started to look down through, I listened to Larry Day today on KMOX talking about there's Cooper, rehabbing, Tink's getting back into it. Brandon Clark who came over in the Sonny Gray trade is getting close. And then at the AA level, we've got so many left-handers, and Mason Molina, Liam Doyle, Braden Davis. You talk about change-ups. We've got two of them here with Molina and Davis that just are outstanding and awesome. And as I started to think, I was like, wow, we would have a lot more pitching in the organization than I guess I thought of. So, Tanner's another one of those guys. Get him up to Springfield. It'll be, another piece to see him then having to pitch again in another league where typically is really hard on pitchers. The Texas League is brutal. So it's really where you start to see a pitcher, kind of have to really face adversity for the first time in their professional career a lot. It's when you get to AA, that's when you can show, if you can have success in the Texas League and those parks against those hitters, that you're for real, and I'm looking forward to him getting here.
If I could, I want to add two more names to the pitching idea.
Please.
Too, who knows where they're going to factor into plans coming back, but Tekoa Roby and Sam Robertson as well, right? Yeah. So they're and you mentioned how many left-handers. It feels like the entire Memphis rotation right now is all left-handed as well. So it's never bad to have enough southpaws, though.
And Eshawn Henderson also, is a guy who's
that's
on
another
the
good
back. Yeah. I mean, I think I started just as I started to kind of walk through it in my brain. I'm like, you're right. Like maybe, and I think that with the pitching development, the way that they've started to kind of turn a corner on how they develop pitchers in house, maybe they are feeling a little bit confident about a lot of the that they don't need to hit on every single name there, but I mean they can hit on enough of them that they can prioritize looking for that third baseman of the future, or drafting that maybe two or three guys at the shortstop position, and then determining how they're going to outlay those guys into the organizational plans.
Well, you guys are throwing out names. I want to have some fun and throw out some names. How about Pete Hansen? Yoiker Fiardo? What about who is the other name that just popped into my head? Chinwei Lin. There are so many names that are floating through the Cardinals pipeline right now that can bring some real excitement. But because I want to play, I also want Gabe to play this game. I want you to pluck a name from Alex's team at AAA and tell me who you want to see at the major league level in the near future, because we kind of hinted at it that the bullpen has been bad this recent stretch, and so is there a name out there that you're kind of angling for to see in St. Louis in the near future?
Well, bullpen is such a boring answer.
It could be a starter that you bump a starter to the bullpen. You could do either or.
I want to see Quinn Matthews, honestly. I'm ready for Quinn Matthews era to start. I've been waiting for the walks to come down, and I'm holding on tightly when he doesn't walk batters in his start. I'm like, okay, let's get him to St. Louis. It's just because Memphis, it's hard to not walk guys for some reason. That's what I'm looking for is Quinn Matthews. Louis Gastelum probably on the reliever side, if in an immediate sense, because I know he's been pitching out of his mind for the last month. I think he's got like one walk in his last 17 innings, and that was the main. I mean, he wasn't really striking people out at the beginning of the year, but yeah, something clicked at something because he's been unbelievable the last month.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I think it's got to be Quinn that I'm just antsy to get up to the big leagues and see what that looks like. I think we've watched Kyle Leahy and Matthew Liberatore. Unfortunately, like these guys, like Libby's strikeout rate has gone up lately, but it's still the quality of contact against him is not getting any better. Unfortunately, he's still getting hit around. There's these big snowball innings. It's getting away from him. And so I wonder if maybe those guys might just ultimately, long-term are earmarked for the bullpen. I would like to see, like we mentioned, Quinn Matthews get back to get his first deserved call up, maybe get Hunter Dobbins back, as soon as possible, get those two guys installed and kick Leahy and Liberatore back to the bullpen. And that would be another way that you can kind of boost the bullpen as well and kind of strengthen that group, because they seem to starting to leak some oil. So I think maybe getting a couple guys whose stuff play up out of the bullpen might help that group as well, as Chaim Bloom has, shown now. I'm so enthralled with what he's going to do, because I think over the last 2 to 3 weeks he's made moves that I did not anticipate him like that took some stones to send down Victor Scott II. It took some stones to send down Nolan Gorman. I did not think that he was going to do that. I said this to people before the season started, take away every expectation you've had or come to know from the John Mozeliak era of building a roster, because it's going to be different. And I fell right into the same trap that these guys are young. They're going to get runway. We're going to, let them, struggle. And they let them struggle for, a third of the season, and then said, sorry, boys, you're not getting it done. And away they went, and new, fresh pieces who are producing came up. So it's been really refreshing. I've seen a lot of people online, especially who are really excited about the aggressiveness that the Cardinals are showing right now. And Derek Gould, just before we hopped on, I saw had put out a piece. I didn't have a chance to read it yet, but the tagline said something about the Cardinal, Chaim Bloom is looking to be as aggressive with the pitching as he has been recently with the hitting, and so I would look for there to be some potential movement coming up and down in the near future. I do want to go ahead and say, once again, you can hear Alex on the call nightly for the AAA Memphis Redbirds, and you can read all of Andy's fine work at scoopswithdannymac.com. Fellas, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for jumping on, as always, and we'll look forward to catching up with you boys down the road.
Yeah, let's do it again. Thanks, Jake.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Gabe, thanks for being here as always. Really appreciate your inclusion in this, and I love to not be able to have to do this alone. We miss Scott a little bit, just a little bit, but he'll be back with us, in a couple weeks. Whenever we have a very special VIP guest slated to join us. Can't give away those details just yet. But next week, I do want to let you guys know that we will be doing our annual Father's Day episode with AA pitcher Ryan Murphy, and his dad will be joining us. So make sure you are on the lookout for that. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Viva Albertos podcast. Don't forget to rate and review and hit that subscribe button so you're notified every Monday morning when a new episode is released. We will talk to you all next week when once again we're joined by AA pitcher Ryan Murphy and his father. Join the show for a special Father's Day episode. Have a great week, and let's go Cards.